Hello. Can you hear me?
Close up on that beard. I won't be able to hear it, but I'll see the levels.
You say jealous?
You want a beard?
That's right.
It's true. If I could, I would.
Okay. You're not muted, are you?
Yeah.
I am not muted.
It's all white.
Yeah, square.
Transparent mustache.
I do see you talking to me though. Yeah.
I see the. I see
on the
the.
Hangouts.
I know, it's like,
Mike,
Closing out
this is
internet
there.
stuff. Quitting Slack.
See. Mute this one.
Opening addition.
Oh, see, stop. See what's coming through. Testing, testing, testing.
There is an HDMI that comes out.
See, stop.
Beatboxing.
Just remembered something. Wi-Fi. I need Wi-Fi everywhere. I mean, not Wi-Fi. That's the devil.
you need it. I have one.
You need a connector? You got a connector? If you have one, it'd be great.
Okay.
Ideally, I would like another network cable.
So if we're connected to Hangouts now, this is recording us just like normal.
That one is?
Yes,
So this will work for our setup?
it should. If you're able to, Andrew, are you still on the Hangout?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and talk and make sure it's recording for mine.
Well, we have to talk really quietly because if he's recording on his end too, right? Like his mic,
I
his
stopped.
mic would be
I stopped
recording.
recording.
Okay, do you want to record and give it a try?
Me record?
Record like you would
I have mic and
the
video.
guest.
Okay. Yep. I am recording.
Okay. So Hangouts is open on that one.
And I am recording right now from this, I think.
Now you should just be sending it out to Hangouts
Yes.
so that Landon can record the Hangouts feed, and I'm recording the mic feed in here. So we should have good
Okay.
mic quality over here and recording quality over there,
Right.
and then we'll mix the two and have only, what was her name again? I'm sorry.
Steph, Stephanie.
We'll only have Steph on recording quality or Hangouts quality. And so,
And we also need to make sure we have no feedback.
so Hangouts is open on that one.
And I am recording right now from this, I think.
And you should just be sending it out to Hangouts
Yes.
so that Landon can record the Hangouts feed, and I'm recording the mic feed in here. So no matter what, we have that.
Can we hook Andrews up to a wired connection? Not very easily.
I think these rooms pretty much have one, and then
Yellow and black.
you're on the phone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in here.
Black is going.
Black is also in there.
Hey guys.
Hey, Steph.
Oh, black goes to the phone and then gray is going to your.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you really well, except I can hear myself on echo.
Okay, that's because. Give me 1 second.
Sweet.
I'm gonna mute real quick. Try to fix it.
How are we gonna make sure?
All right, can you hear me, Steph?
Yep.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So it's not coming out of the. We have it not going through the TV. Can you still hear an echo?
Let me see. Yes. I think it's actually a little worse now.
It's worse now. Great. Okay. Let's see. We didn't have this with Seth. Is this the exact same setup though? We have Hangouts.
Session of that. Could that be it? Let me mute it.
All right. Do we have an echo now?
Yes. There's only one computer on in that room, right? Yeah.
We should
Just
have.
you and Lincoln, and that's on mute. So.
Right.
My
Okay. Okay. Wait. I think it's better now. I think you're
Okay.
fine. I don't know what just changed, but something. If you did something, it worked.
How about
Sweet.
now? Is this any feedback now?
I don't think so. No, we're good.
No, it's not gonna-
That is great.
Cool.
It is, but we're not gonna be talking at the same time.
We're still figuring out how this works. You are our
most ideal setup.
Yeah, you are our second remote interview, so we're still figuring it out. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. I figured most of you guys were, it's really nice though that you can kind of set aside a room and just go do it. So that's great.
And I have to do it in one of our houses. That is nice.
Oh man, we need
Or
picks and
all
everything.
independently.
Yeah, I got pretty lucky. The last person just left my office, so I'm officially alone in here, which means I won't be getting disturbed.
Perfect.
Frankie, you need a pick too. You're gonna be on it.
All right. Well, do you have just?
Start recording.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
All right.
So we're going to be recording this whole time because as you have, it sounds like you've listened to a few of them. I'm pretty sure. So
I have.
you know that we just kind of drop in stuff at the beginning just to cover it in. So we're going to just keep recording for the majority of this. Like we said in the, or like, the email said, if you say something that you don't want added, or like if you accidentally say a client name, anything like that, just stop for a second and we'll put a marker there so that we can clip it out for you in the, in the post processing or, editing.
Right. I mean, I can, if I'm mentioning a place where I worked or something, that's okay, right? I think I was listening to a few that people were naming companies and whatnot, but I guess they're maybe using it more as general.
Yeah,
Wanna
it's
bash 'em, obviously,
right.
but
It's at your
that's-
discretion. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But it's just like if you say something that you don't mean to, just give it a pause. No big deal. We'll clip it out later.
Okay.
And do you have a pick set aside? Do you have something picked out?
I do. It's not a coding language, but I have something set aside.
That's fine. Just making sure, because if you didn't, I'd say think about it while we're doing this. But
Yeah, I went back through the top list right before this, so
okay.
I think I'm pretty good. The hardest thing is for me to not stutter too much while we're talking.
It'll be fine. Landon, Frankie, and Jacob, who are the editors, I guess I should add Frankie to the editor list, are master editors, and they will cut out all the ums, ands, buts, and all rights. So
So it's all about just making their job easier, but they
That's
can
right.
work the
That's right.
magic. I see.
Appreciate it.
Great.
Cool. So,
Really quick before we get started, guys, whoever's in there, can you just do me a favor? And I can hear Andrew perfectly fine. When you guys talk, if you could make sure you're projecting pretty well for me. I do not have good hearing in my right ear, so it's generally not a problem, and I don't really anticipate it'll be a problem. But every once in a while, when people are in a conference room, I have a little bit of issues. So just as long as you project, we'll all be good. But I just kind of want to lay that down as a precursor in case I'm saying what or something like that. Okay.
So we need to project into this.
yeah. Maybe I turn
A
this.
little bit louder than what you just did. Yes.
Very fine. Thank you for calling it out. Can you hear me all right?
Yep. You sound great.
And Jacob?
Hello, I'm Jacob.
I can hear you well too. Perfect.
Frankie?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. You guys sound great.
So I feel like we should break out the whiskey now, probably. You said you brought Balvenie, right?
I did. I didn't bring a lot, but I brought enough, I think, for 1 hour. I brought one shot.
Okay.
I usually
Well-
pour more. So yeah, I have it sitting. I don't really have a nice glass here, so it's poured in my Florida Gators coffee mug. that I'm going to drink it out of, which is blasphemy, I know. But let's break it out.
We're
Paper
classy.
cups.
Yeah.
No, we're being classy.
It is even worse because this will eat right through the paper.
Yeah.
Oh, paper cups, nice.
This is what you mentioned on episode 1, right?
This is
This
what I
was your
mentioned on
pick for
episode 1. And you guys have the pleasure of being here for the actual opening of the bottle because I didn't bring one with me on accident, so I had to go out and buy one.
Oh my gosh, Andrew. What a nice guy.
I know.
This is why you guys are all podcasting with him, right? He brings really good scotch.
This is about the only reason why.
Is that for pouring? Is that name?
The neck.
Yeah,
Could be.
like for air? I mean,
All right. We have our 4. Man, I really wish I'd brought in my Glencairns, but I didn't. So this is where we are. Enjoy it if you want, otherwise you don't have to. But yeah, so this is what we talked about in the first episode, Balvenie Double Wood, 12-year, and it's pretty good. So,
Cheers to
cheers.
episode 8 and stuff.
Episode 8 and
Yeah.
our second remote episode. Here we go. So, Steph.
Yes. Everyone's sipping.
Everyone's sipping, and Frankie is not enjoying it very much.
it's just a little strong for me, but I'm going to drink it.
Hey, this is neat, so you can go ahead and add a little bit of water to it, and you might like it a little bit better.
A really good measurement that I once learned from, I used to go to a few whiskey tastings, and I don't know if I really ascribe to this anymore, but in one of the tastings I went to, they basically said the amount of water you're supposed to pour into, your helping is if you take a bottle cap and you turn it upside down and you pour water into the bottle cap, that a bottle cap's worth of water is kind of how much it needs for some of the whiskeys to aerate. That's the average.
Isn't there an old theory that you're supposed to use the water that the whiskey was made with as well?
Where am I going to find that?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go to Islay first off.
I think it's more of like the Irish traditions, like if you're around at the breweries, they have some of the water there
Oh.
that you can put in your cup.
Well, that sounds amazing.
I think
can,
that
get
a
that.
bottle of water with every bottle of whiskey from the
They
distillery.
should. They really should.
I don't know if I want to admit this, but I didn't know that you were supposed to pour water in whiskey. But I'm
You're
not a
not
whiskey
supposed.
drinker.
I mean,
Okay,
there's
okay.
no supposed to, right? I mean, that's one way of drinking it. Yeah.
There's some arguments like it
It ruins it. That's
enhances
what I
the flavor
Oh.
if just the right amount
Oh,
releases
I
some
see.
molecules or something. But you
Basically.
you can drown it very easily.
Yeah, and it also depends on how well filtered the whiskey is, right? So, like a lot of your blended whiskeys, those are usually, you mix them most of the time unless they're really high quality. And then sort of a lot of the less refined, like the 12 years, maybe sometimes 15 years, you use a little bit of water or, one of those giant, amazing round ice balls. And then a lot of times, from what I've seen, that some of the really high-end scotches will say you're supposed to drink this neat. So it's like once you hit a certain level, the pretentiousness just takes over everybody, and they're like, if you put anything in this, you are screwing up what I've made. So I don't know if that's actually across the board, but that's the impression I've always gotten.
Gotcha.
And this is actually pretty good. It's just, I am. It's strong.
Are you feeling it already?
Yeah. Well,
Cool. So to get us started with code talk instead of whiskey talk, tell us about yourself, Steph. What are you working on? What have you worked on in the past? Give us a little bit of history here. Who are you?
All right, my name is Stephanie Seraphine. I am a senior server-side developer for a company that builds websites for public companies. We're basically an investor relations agency. I got my start actually in journalism and have always had a love of content and data, and now as a programmer, a lot of what drives me is taking content and data and putting it out there in a way that will benefit a lot of people. My most recent project that has gone live is I have a gamification application in adult living communities down here in South Florida. So basically, when people are over 55 and they retire and they're in a community, it's a health and wellness app that allows these people to check into volunteer activities, into fitness activities, and encourages them to be healthier and earn rewards for engaging in the community.
Awesome. Awesome. When did you get started in development?
There's a trick question there. I started coding sometime in middle school, and again, this likens back to my love of content. I always wrote when I was younger, and so my first foray into coding was when I was building my own websites on GeoCities because I thought everyone wanted to read my poetry. But professionally, I've been developing for about 9 years now. I graduated with a degree in journalism and a multimedia focus, so that was HTML, CSS, Flash, video and audio editing, and spent the first few years of my career in the journalism industry before I went full-time into a server-side developer job.
Cool. What's something that you love about development?
I think using development, we can sort of attain the unattainable. And a lot of people would say that about something like climbing Mount Everest or breaking some world running record or something like that. But a lot of things, especially in terms of data, we wouldn't be able to really calculate with a pen and paper, or it would take us forever. And just to be able to take these surmountable amounts of data and glean them into something that is usable by us or by other people, and use those results to better the world is just something that we can do as developers that I don't know if we could before.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just talked about using that data a couple episodes ago for good, just like you said.
The civic hacking stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Eric actually talked about it. Not use so much paper.
Right. How about an awesome or exciting, one of your favorite development stories? Just something that you have encountered when you've been working, or some crazy problem you solved? Anything stick out?
Well, I'm going to stay along the same lines, and I would say one of my favorite coding story, one of the times I felt most fulfilled as a developer, was when I was in journalism and I was working for the Miami Herald. And one of the things that came about was there was this, so basically historically there was this event that happened that's called Operation Paint Your Pond. And that was when over 14,000 Cuban miners between 1960 and 1962 were sent to the United States by their parents, and they were unaccompanied. So we heard these crazy stories of how parents would drag their kids, anywhere from young kids up to 18, to the beach in the middle of the night, and there would be this plane there, and a pastor or priest would, take the kid onto a plane, and their parents would say goodbye because they couldn't go, and these kids were just getting flown across to Florida. And there was a father on this side who would write these children's names down by hand on a piece of paper and then write down where they would go. So there were children who would end up going to family members' houses if family members had already traveled here, say another parent or cousins or something like that. But most of the time, these Cuban children did not have families here. And so their parents were basically sending them ahead saying, well, we'll find you someday. And there were several hundred cities across the nations that had foster homes that took in these Cuban children. So what happened was we had a photocopy of this giant ledger of these 14,000 kids' names and what plane they came across on and what foster home they went to. And we OCR'd the list, and we basically had a coworker of mine, we had 2 weeks to build a social network for the 40-year anniversary of the operation. And we allowed, what we had happen was we had these people who are now, 50 years later, so they're in their 50s to 60s when this went out. They were able to identify themselves based on the data we had in the ledger and create a profile and write their story and connect with people. And the craziest story was, we had 2 weeks to do this, and we were like, why are we building a social network for this, small subset of people? But even though most of these minors did end up finding their parents later, what happened was a lot of these minors, because they had no parents at the time, they had very, very strong bonds with a lot of the people they traveled over, with whom they traveled over. So it was either people that came over on the plane with or people that they spent time with in the foster homes. And then their parents would pick them up and they would never see these people again. And, between the ages of 10 and 18, these are some of the most significant years of your life. So I'll never forget, we were doing so the social network went out. It's still up to this day. People are still writing on it to this day. Out of the 14,000 plus kids, about 1,800 plus joined the network, so about 10% are in the network. But we were doing a presentation down here in Miami, and this woman came up to me and just gave me the biggest hug ever. And she basically ended up in tears and said that there was some friend that she had made when she was traveling over, when she had no family and no parents, and she was in her very early teens, and they became the best of friends, and they were separated after they went their separate ways with their families, and they had no way to find each other. They didn't even know each other's last names, but because we were able to pair people based on when they came over and how they came over, they were able to use the network to find each other. And one lived here in Miami and one lived in California, and they flew across, one of them flew across the nation to meet the other one, and they just showed us pictures of their reunion, and they were crying and hugging, and they sat down and shared stories of the last 50 years. So that was a really long story, but to me, that is an amazing moment that we can do with coding, and every time I get a letter like that, it just makes me so proud to be able to do what we do.
Yeah, that was like the only thing that came out of that app. That sounds like that alone would have been worth it.
Yeah.
Kind of makes me wonder what I'm doing right now.
We're all at an agency now, so we all sold out to the man.
What is even the point of this?
Yeah, no, my heart will always, I love developing new things. I think every week we can come up with new ideas, but there's something really special about putting something out there for the community, whether it's civic hacking or journalism, or even just making an app that is useful and enhances people's lives, right?
Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. Wow, well, that's pretty hard to recover from.
No, it wasn't even on topic. I'm very sorry, guys.
Nope,
You're
that's
the one we're interviewing.
That's
you
right.
Follow that up.
You could have, yeah, you're the one who has to, exactly.
Well, good luck, Steph.
Well, gonna probably sort of hand it over to you. I know that we want to talk about development in code camps and different code boot camps, as well as mentoring developers. So you have a lot of experience with that. Where do you want to start?
That's a really good question. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to try to figure out where would be the...
Yeah.
I have notes, but... Okay.
If they were segmented topics, we'd probably just say let's start with one or the other. But since they're so intertwined, you know, best if you tell us where to go.
Sure, of course. So down here in South Florida, we have a rising rate of coding boot camps. Most of these coding boot camps encompass everything from HTML, CSS, some JavaScript, and Ruby on Rails. Ruby and Rails are seem to be the server-side language of choice when it comes to these boot camps. And they have very rigorous 8 to 12-week programs. Down here, the main ones I know are under 12 weeks. And their goal is to get these people, generally these are adults who have already been working for a certain number of years in any industry, to change career paths. Now, there's a huge breakdown in the, sorry, I'm going to cut for a second. The breakdown in the community of students in the boot camps down here is very interesting. There's a huge chunk of these people who have come from various industries who want to be entrepreneurs or already entrepreneurs, and they're taking a boot camp course because they want to invest in the knowledge of what it takes to be a programmer, and they may have a certain amount of money and they may already have an idea, but they don't want to hire a person who can talk the talk but who can't walk the walk. So they are giving themselves some background so that when it comes down to finding the right people who understand the technology to do whatever they want to do, they have a little bit of a mental framework in order to do that. The second group are people who have had careers in the past and they just want to change their career. They don't feel like they have the ability to grow in their current career, and they want to try something new, and they know that there's so many jobs out there, so they will take a boot camp in order to make that transition much easier because they don't have enough time to study on their own. And the third one is there may have been people who have already started to try to, this is very similar to the second one, but there are people that have already started to try to find jobs in the career path, and maybe that they just don't have enough experience, and so they, again, quit their job to do code, do a coding boot camp, and try to find their way in the career.
On that
And there's a huge, it's very, very exciting to see what's going on down here, at least, because a lot of these people, there are a few sides to this. A lot of these people are not most of them are not computer science degree people. They don't have a lot of background in technology, but they may have experience in a lot of other fields. So in the last boot camp where I judged the pitch day and I spoke, out of the 30 students in the pitch camp, in the boot camp, I think 4 or 5 of them came from biotech backgrounds. And then a few of them came from management backgrounds, someone came from recruiting backgrounds, some of them came from advertising backgrounds. And I think that gives a lot of these students a huge advantage over other people who are just starting their careers in computer science who maybe don't have experience in another career. Sorry, I'm trying to think of, I may want to kill that sentence. I'm trying to think of a better way of putting this.
No, it's fine. But I think it's a really good point that a lot of people who start in development have just been doing that all along. So opening that up to a ton of people who have experience everywhere else means that they come at it looking at all of these problems in completely different ways than we might. Or, I mean, you came from journalism, so I imagine that you approach things differently than somebody who comes from, biotech.
Exactly. And I think that my journalism background has actually helped my career more than hurt it. When I first started developing, I was extremely afraid that I was going to be immediately eliminated from a lot of job opportunities just because I did not have a CS background. And generally the case is, as I believe most of you know, if you can prove that you can develop, the sky's the limit, right? So coming from a biotech background or a pharmaceutical background or a marketing background, a lot of times in that specific industry, you may see where there are industrial inefficiencies, right? You may see where companies can do better, where things could be integrated more, or processes just don't work. And maybe programming is the answer, maybe coding is the answer, but the people who are typically in that industry either don't think in code or they don't know how to get from point A to point B. So I think that these students who come from these backgrounds, join a boot camp, and graduate into a little bit of code could really, they're, I think, in the crux position to be able to revolutionize their own industries that they were previously in. Whether or not many of them are going to do that, I don't know, but that's what I think that they should do. I would go back and be like, hey, we had this problem while I was here. I have a solution for you. And a prime example of that happening is, as I mentioned when I introduced myself, a prime example of that is the application that I have out now in the adult communities. So I have a friend who came to me, and he is the director of fitness at one of these communities, and he said, hey, we have this antiquated software. It's not useful for anything, but we have these computer kiosks everywhere, and I want to make a check-in program, and these are the features that we use from the software. These are the features that are not in the software, and all of these things are designed around this fitness and wellness program that I have designed and I have prototyped for 2 years on paper. So let's make it an application, right? And he can't code it himself, but he could see how the communities could use something like that to expand and promote the community itself to do better. So I think that a lot of these students who are coming out of these boot camps should really be, I mean, maybe if they don't like their industry, they don't want to go back, right? But if they have that opportunity, they know their industry, and then they've gained this entire whole set of knowledge. Now, I mean, when you come from a boot camp, you know a lot and you know nothing at the same time, which is what I always tell the students, but it's enough to start imagining how you could do something, right? Even if you can't do it all yourself.
I know my dad, he's a teacher of 30 plus years. He's thinking about going to one of these camps for that same reason of he's seen inefficiencies in the education system, at least in his program, and has some ideas of how to spread knowledge around or teach kids, but he just doesn't have the tool sets to do it, and he can't afford me, really. There's only so much time in the world. I can't do everything for him. So he's thinking about leaving his tenure of teaching and moving on and learn how to code. So it's a big consideration. But
That's really cool.
But why not? Somebody's got to do it. On that topic, I was actually just having a discussion with one of my old high school teachers. She's a very good friend of mine now, and she teaches AP English. She just got promoted to some sort of director in the school board, so she's going to be taking over the vision for how secondary education in our county is going to evolve over the next few years. And one of the, ironically, or maybe not ironically, maybe this is how the world goes, is there's a lot more push into this whole just-in-time technology within the secondary education system as well, which I'm wondering if your dad is thinking along those lines too. So there's a lot of tech apps now where they're trying to integrate into schools where there are like these mini modules where students can go in before and after classes, and they can basically write with fellow students. It's kind of like, I think a few people who have done internet college courses may have seen something similar, but where they can do a little pre or post review with some little games and write to their fellow students and figure out how to do something, and also have a little bit more interaction with the teacher one-on-one. So,
just to interrupt you real quick, could we get a definition of just-in-time learning?
yes. So let me, I probably should give you an official definition rather than the Stephanie hijacked definition. So just-in-time learning seems to have it seems to have a slightly different definition depending on what angle you're coming from. So coding boot camps are an implementation of just-in-time learning, and if you basically they're also considered the most successful implementation of just-in-time learning. So the idea is that you don't need to go to it's a non-traditional classroom. You don't need to go to a four-year college. It's a strategy where you're in this small group. There's a lot of interactive feedback going on all the time between the activities and the work. The students prepare for class, and they do things inside and out of class, and that the technology supports that. So it's not just, okay, go home and do your homework, but there's pre-courses, post-courses, various checkpoints, a lot of student interaction. So in these coding boot camps, a lot of times there's a max of 30 students. Usually it's between like 8 and 30 students. They have a teacher, but before they even join the boot camp, there's usually pre-learning, right? So at the one down here where I'm most familiar, they have, I think it's almost like a week's worth of coding to do beforehand. And I think most of it is spend some time on Code Academy, spend some time on Lynda, or spend some time on Treehouse and do ABC to get up to speed, because we're going to hit the ground running. But there's this idea of pre-learning and then communicating with your fellow students through the entire time, and having the entire learning process be way more fluid and interactive.
I have a quick question, if I can interject stuff.
Absolutely.
With those resources, because those are resources I hand out to people too, that seems like in this field I have lots of people ask me, hey, what you do seems pretty cool. If I was interested, how do I get involved? So I throw out those resources. And just hearing kind of talk about computer science degrees and some of these courses, do you see like a paradigm shift in the future of not going to college and doing more stuff like this to get in a career path than going to get a computer science degree?
So you mean for coding in general, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There is already a decrease in people going to computer science degrees, from what I've read. I don't have the exact number offhand, but it really depends, because I think when it comes down to open source languages and building open source websites, apps, mobile development, that yes, there's going to be a paradigm shift. I think that people are going to say, I think that coding boot camps are going to be the next vocational school, right? So if you want to learn how to build a boat motor, you're going to go to Yamaha and learn how to fix their motors, right? So I think that a lot of people, if they want to learn how to build websites or open source apps, they're going to go to coding boot camps. From what I remember, this is quite a few years ago now, but the computer science and computer engineering degrees focus more on Microsoft-based software, right? So Visual Basic, ASP, yada yada. So I don't know if you're going to still have to, if you want to join certain types of companies, maybe certain industries who still stick to the Microsoft and the larger products, you might have to go to college if you aspire to be a part of something like that, right? But in terms of agencies and entrepreneurial businesses, I think most people will not use a computer science degree as a baseline anymore.
Do you see that as a difference between front end and back end then? Where like the boot camps be more focused on the front end and the computer science is deeply focused more along the back end lines?
I think it depends on the boot camp. The boot camp that I spend a lot of times interacting with, even though they start with HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript, they focus the majority of their time on Ruby. So we just hired a developer from the most recent graduating cohort, and she likes front end better, but when it came down to us asking her, well, can you slice a full website with A, B, C, D, and E? She was like, well, I could, but it would take me a long time because we actually focus more on Ruby. So I do know that certain boot camps are taking a more pointed role to evolve their coursework and focus more on JavaScript. Now, that still could be, I think that's a lot of Node and React and things like that. It'll be interesting to see if over the course of the next few years that if Ruby takes a backseat to JavaScript, I would say, in terms of in the bootcamp coursework, or maybe if it becomes more even.
I think it also probably has to do a lot with your geographic location, because down in Florida, Ruby, it sounds like, is the go-to back-end language, but up here, we're still really heavily on .NET. I mean, this is like the only place in the United States that I've heard of this, but we barely use Ruby at all up here. I mean, if you saw a Ruby job up here, it's going to be taken like immediately, because everybody wants .NET.
Yeah, I mean, at least one, if not two, of the largest agencies down here definitely use .NET. So at some point, I was going to apply for a job at an agency, and I was like, all right, time to learn .NET. I guess they're not switching anytime soon. But in terms of startups and stuff, I mean, we have a very thriving startup community, and those people don't have the time or money to license anything like that, so they just they go open source.
Makes sense.
Frankie, what did your classes focus on? .NET?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow, so you were at a coding bootcamp for .NET?
Yeah, I was actually, yep, that's what I was going to say. I was in boot camp, it was a 4-month for backend.
Okay, so you focused more on the server side as well?
Yep.
How about your front-end focus and other tasks?
Front-end focus was not, it wasn't very much.
Okay, but you liked the front end better?
Yes.
Right? Because
that's what I'm doing now.
Okay.
I went to school for backend, but I prefer front-end.
Did you have any hurdles in getting a job doing front end after having more experience in the back end from a boot camp?
Not so much. I actually got a job at VML because my face was seen a lot. So I was around a lot. I don't know.
I think something that they saw, and I was going to say earlier when you were talking about just the learning aspect of changing careers. If you find someone that's invested in learning, there's so much learning in our career path that that's a valuable trait. Because like you said, you get out of those things and you learn a lot, but then you see how much you haven't learned yet and all that you need to learn.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the biggest pros for people coming out of the boot camp. And at my company, we just recently, as I said, we recently hired someone from a boot camp. And the biggest issue was convincing companies to hire such junior developers. But if you're talking about someone who, in general, Frankie, I don't know if you fit into this mold, but a lot of these people had a career already, right? They quit their job, which means they are no longer getting that income. And I'm telling you, once you start working, who doesn't want to have that money coming in anymore, right?
Yeah.
And they say, no, I'm going to do this. They stop their income. They may or may not take out a loan to take these boot camps because they're not cheap, right? I mean, the average one, I think they're somewhere around $10,000.
Yeah,
so
they're pretty expensive.
Yeah. So you take out a loan or you take it out of your savings to do this boot camp, and then for the next 8 to 12 weeks, you still are not getting any influx of money from you, and you're putting all this out there. So it's a huge dedication to go to one of these boot camps. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, and you're going all day long, so that is your job. You can't get a part-time job. You have to have that, and you have to focus completely on that since you are learning so quickly.
Yeah, halfway through one of the boot camps down here, they have a friends and family day, and the running joke is, well, here's where you're gonna show your friends and family what you've learned because you haven't seen them for the past 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So, but that's a great skill, right? Because you can turn around to, like you said, these people have so much impetus to go out there and learn, and they are learning so intensely the entire time that you know that when you hire someone from one of these boot camps, all they're going to want to do is learn, prove themselves, and learn some more, and they understand what it means to have to go out of your way to continue to do that.
Yeah, and you're already in the, I guess you could say, mindset of learning. You're coming right out of that, so you're used to learning so quickly. And just being a developer, you have to learn extremely quickly. It's moving so quick. Every day you're learning something new, so you have to be prepared for that.
It's almost like these code boot camps are YC for you instead of a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're developing yourself. Y Combinator? It's like shoot, what is it? What would you generalize Y Combinator to?
Oh, it's like an accelerator or an incubator?
Yeah, like an incubator. Yeah, it's basically an incubator for yourself because it's not a 4-year program, right? It's almost an incubator for your career instead of your startup.
I like that metaphor. It's pretty good. So yeah, so there's this struggle with finding these junior developers jobs. I think that some of the best boot camps have very good hire rates, but there is still this mentality where if you go on a job site, most of the people, it's senior developer that's senior, I want a rock star, I want a ninja, I want any really cool, Western or Japanese movie acronym you can think of. I want all these things. I'm none of those things. If anything, I would be a ninja, but I'm not agile, I'm just short. So, but people always want senior devs, and I've worked in a tech startup where there were too many senior devs and everyone was butting heads the entire time. And one of the principles of management that is so, I feel like it's either overlooked or it's just not really spoken about is building the right team, right? I don't know if you guys can speak to that over there, but having a solid lead and then having people of different skill sets that all blend together and having this eagerness and the willingness to learn together. If you have too many people who think that they should run the show, then sometimes you get less done. So a lot of people have this idea that, well, if we bring in a junior dev, they only have 9 to 12 weeks experience, which by the way is over 1,000 hours worth of experience, which is the equivalent to about 6 months on the job if you work 40 hours a week. We're going to have to sit here and train these people, and yeah, it's going to take them a little longer to get started, but junior developers know how to learn, these people want to learn, and they're willing to listen. I mean, have you guys ever had any experiences that support this or disagree with this?
Nodding my head the whole time you've been talking.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really do much good for audio, but yeah, we're all just nodding our heads in here. I mean, I think what you said before, having too many people butting heads will sometimes get less done. I think that can be made to an absolute too many people butting heads will always get less done. I mean, not having a good mix of a team is the first killer, right? More so than the technology that you have to use.
Well, you also need some people to do the grunt work, right? So you need to be able to say, I want to send you off with some SVG thing that you have to convert for days and days and work on that.
It's been one day. You're doing good.
It's like it's been years.
It's been one day.
So you always need those people to, those people who I'm talking about myself, to kind of fill in and let the more senior level people do the higher end work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, have you noticed anything coming on, Frankie, where you Well, I guess I don't really have a good question there. Never mind. We'll clip this little section.
So my question
Begin with a question, but now I don't have one. Go ahead, Steph.
So one of my big questions, and I've thought about this a lot, and I've pitched a few things. One of our boot camps down here, the major question is how to get all of these junior developers into jobs. Because A, people are afraid, managers can be afraid to hire them even though they really do need them on their team if they have a bunch of senior devs, right? They're afraid there's going to be too much time training them. They think that, maybe there are things that are more complex that a senior developer needs to do, but how do these junior developers get hired, and when does critical mass hit, right? Because I think we have a couple 100,000 developer jobs open in the United States. If anyone knows the real statistic, hit me up. I tried to find it. Not too long ago, I read 200,000 jobs, but I'm not sure if that's correct. But we are pumping out about I believe 25,000 junior developers a year now, and that's the number right now, right? That's not including the growth that these boot camps are happening, right? So how do we get these people jobs now? How do we convince people that they're worth it? When are they not worth it anymore? And when are we going to hit this critical mass? Because I think that's going to happen where there are just too many junior devs and it's just not viable anymore, right? I actually am not sure. I know we just spoke about earlier, you guys asked me the question about whether or not boot camps are going to take the place of CS degrees. Well, they might for a while, and then there's a part of me that wonders, well, give it 2 more years. If we're pumping out like 50,000 junior devs a year, let's say, because we're at 25 now, let's say next year we're at 50, there's going to be a point, that's 200,000 jobs, say, and not just junior dev jobs, but that's across the gamut of every language, right? Every spot. So I think the people going into boot camps now are in the best position they could possibly be in, but I don't have faith in the people going into the boot camps a year and a half from now. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that it's still going to be viable? Do you think, there's also the argument that more and more companies are realizing that they can do stuff with data, so as long as people have interest in data, maybe that there will continue to be more and more job openings.
Yeah, I think that growth will continue, right? I think that there will continue to be more growth in the number of development jobs available, right? But I don't know that we can really even pontificate that the growth will match the growth of development camps, because if they grow by 100% this year, and obviously we're just throwing around fake numbers, right? But if they grow at 100% this year from 25 to 50, then that would, let's say at the next time they grow by 50% and jump to 75. But will the rate of development jobs available match that rate? Or, it's hard to say, but I think one of the best ways to get those associate developers or the junior developers hired is educate the team to basically, teams and companies to say, hey, you're completely out of equilibrium right now. And the way to become most effective is to get your team back into equilibrium. And one of those ways would be to hire some junior devs to balance out all of the very, very, very strong opinions that you have in the room.
My question would be, is what happens if we start putting more focus on technology and development in early elementary? Well, those kids start building their way up. Do code camps turn into back-end camps because they've already learned front-end stuff? That foundation already in junior high school, they already have the JavaScript or CSS or all that stuff that's being are relatively in a front-end code camp. Would those change and completely get rid of that 4-year computer science degree?
Well, but at that point, we're talking about AI, right? So, we're not even going to really need to worry about it.
No, it's true.
It has a tablet. They're working on code. It's been in there.
Right.
They're working on it, and hopefully they can get it to every demographic and get all the kids involved so they can work their way up, and then that advances more so we can have AI finally. We have enough developers to finally make artificial intelligence.
I don't know if that's a good thing. Let's pump the brakes there.
I'm moving to the forest, guys. I'm just saying.
What'd you say, Steph?
I said I'm moving to the forest.
There you
I quit, guys. No, actually, in Florida, there is a huge push in the education system to get elementary students, elementary, middle, and high school students learning code in school. So I believe in my old high school, they already have a minor coding course becoming a mandatory part of the curriculum. And they are talking about in the next 5 years having, I think it's 5 years. It's not like next year, but it's within the near future, having a lot of the elementary schools and middle schools having kids start doing coding courses. So yeah, I mean, we're going to be out of jobs in 10 years, guys. We better all be managers and CEOs and entrepreneurs by then.
I know, we need to get working on that. My follow-up question is, who do you think will be teaching all these classes? That's the next part. Would you want to leave your agency job and go down to elementary school or junior high for...
That's a good question, because right now the people that are teaching these courses or teaching the students have no idea and have no background. My dad's a teacher as well in a high school down in Texas, and they did Code Week, I think. What's it called? Code Week?
Yeah.
Something like that.
National Week of Code.
National Week of Code, yeah. So, and he basically said, yeah, all the teachers just basically give the kids tablets and let them play around for an hour because nobody has any idea what they're doing.
Wow. I never thought about that side of it. I guess we could be doing that in 10 years, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's just not going to be much. Do you work for pennies?
Yeah. Well.
Cafeteria food.
Well, I guess you could do like a few schools in a day, visit every room in a classroom.
For like an hour a day?
Rotate like our teachers do or band teachers do.
That's an idea. Okay.
Well, again, the whole idea of just-in-time learning is there's also a lot of technology being introduced into classrooms now. And so my colleague, she actually has a master's in basically informational technology education. And that's a thing, which sounds very funny, but it's basically the nature of teaching over the internet. And so maybe in a few years, maybe code will be taught in schools, but maybe you won't have to drive from school to school, but rather we'll be at a point where the students will sit down in a room, they'll log into a chat room, they'll see your face on a screen, and you'll say, all right, students, and it'll be a live version of Code Academy, but for 4th graders or 6th graders or 2nd graders. And I think that's a real possibility. So if you guys want to develop any educational applications, you should go for it because nobody's done it yet.
But we also just need to get through this first generation to go all the way through the whole program. Because once they've gone through the whole program, they can become the people who are predispositioned to become teachers already have a little base of knowledge so they can assist with the virtual reality teacher as well. So just kind of making that first jump and getting that first generation through.
Sure. What I was referring to is almost more that the application that it would rely behind. So there are a few technology apps out there right now, but in the education market, just like any of these other markets, we were talking about people coming from biotech, or people coming from pharmacy, or people coming from any of these other industries, right? If you've been in the industry and you've been through the industry, it's very hard to break into an industry unless you really know what they're all about. So if there are people in the education industry who understand code, who could spearhead a learning system to making code accessible to those students, then I think it's a catch-one, catch-all. You have the right in, you can pitch it. I think it's a great opportunity for an application. That's not what we're really here to talk about today, but I'm just saying.
You gotta be careful. Do you want that published? Because that's a pretty big idea that could, get stolen.
I don't know. We'll figure. I mean, we're almost at the end. I need like 5 minutes to think about that one. But it's true, guys. It's true.
Well, let us know. We can cut it if you. We might steal it as well.
Yeah, it might be that by the time we publish this, we have a new startup off the ground, just so you know.
Andrew,
I'm cool if you guys start the startup. You just need to invite me.
That's right. Well, we're whiteboarding as we speak, so.
Oh, great. You've got a whiteboard in that room? Man, I'm behind the times.
We actually do.
we have a TV and some whiskey, or scotch, or whiskey scotch.
It's all whiskey.
Scotch whiskey.
We've got all we need to get a startup going, basically.
That's right.
So I know we're going to wrap up soon, but one of the last points, and I think Frankie might be able to speak to this as well, is another benefit of boot camps over the traditional CS degree is as women, we have grown up we've always heard that math and science are not our thing. We should like English, we should like art, we should be creative, we should dance, whatever, I don't know. But I've always loved math and science the best, particularly logic and symbolic logic and math. And I think that even for me, who has mostly ventured that way, I mean, I loved English too, as obvious by my journalism degree, but I was never afraid of anything like that. In college, I almost got a computer science minor, and I chickened out, guys. And look where I am today. It's ridiculous. So I had a journalism major, a minor in business, and I almost did a minor in computer science. And I just said, this is too scary for me, and I did not do it. And I think that coding boot camps for women, particularly, I don't know if this applies to minorities, but I think that they might seem a little bit more accessible in terms of, hey, I really did want to code. Maybe I could take a boot camp, and you don't feel like you're on this giant insurmountable hill of this degree that's very white male dominated.
Yeah, I mean, in my class, it was me and another girl. So it's still pretty low. One of my teachers was a female also. But, I mean, we're paving the way.
Yeah, you are. Did your boot camp offer any sort of scholarships or any sort of incentives for women or minorities to join the boot camp?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
That
would be a good idea. Yeah.
We need more diversity there.
Yeah, agreed.
That's ridiculous.
Like you said earlier, I know there was a friend that I had talked to, and her daughter was in high school, and she had some arguments with the teachers because, yeah, her daughter was very smart and could have gone into, development or something like that, and they were pushing her to other career paths. So, I don't know, that's interesting to hear.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's just mind-blowing to me, especially if you're smart and you're interested in development. I mean, I don't see the problem between doing a boot camp or a CS degree, but, and it would be a shame for someone to be pushed into a career path and then a few years later go, well, this is never what I wanted to do, but I was told to do this, right? And then have to go to a boot camp. I love the boot camps, but I hope that nobody has to do that for that reason.
Yeah, as a backup. It's really interesting. But that's really interesting.
Yeah, but down here, at least one of the boot camps, I think multiple ones definitely offer incentives to women and minorities. And I think that makes it even better, right? So these things are expensive. There's already a barrier to entry. The hardest thing about the boot camps, in my opinion, is the lack of money. The lack of money coming in, the amount of money coming out, and it still feels like it's one of those things that middle class and upper middle class people can go do, right? You have to get approved for a loan if you don't have the money. So what if you have bad credit? Then you're never going to get to change your career. So offering those incentives to allow people to start their life over is something that's very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, that was a perfect way to end this. I completely agree.
I will say, on that note, the whiskey has officially eaten through the paper cup.
Whiskey beats paper.
Yes.
Whiskey always beats paper. There we go.
That was awesome, Stephanie. Thank you very much for joining us. It was really informational.
That was great. Thank you.
Yes, nice getting to know you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. I feel a little bad because I feel like on the other podcast more people had conversations, and I feel like I was talking the majority of the time.
No, I mean, that's part of the thing of doing these remote. You know, it's easier to basically have us interview you, and you are the one with all the information that we're trying to learn, right? So not only are we learning it ourselves, we're also kind of pushing it out to other people. So it's perfectly acceptable. No worries.
All right, I feel a little better now. But
Well, feel a lot better. Let's run through a few things real quick. We're going to do our picks, and then we're going to probably drop you off to do the intro, outro, just so that we can get it real quick. And we'll go from there. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Cool. So you are our guest of honor. Let's start with you. What is your pick for this week, Steph?
So my pick is, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts recently because I have a very long commute. Of course, I listen to Codan, everything awesome. But when I run out of that podcast to listen to, there are a few I listen to, and one of my favorite ones right now is called The Smartest Man in the World. And it's by the comedian Greg Proops. You guys may know him from Whose Line Is It Anyway? And he's actually very brilliant in a podcast form. It's a little bit comedic, a lot of information relevant to the world today, and I have a blast listening to it. So I would say after you finish this podcast and you're all caught up, go check out The Smartest Man in the World.
Awesome.
Great, we'll do that next.
Landon.
I was going to throw out a couple picks. I was going to throw out Angular 2. I've been using it lately, and I've been having a lot of fun writing Angular 2 code. The second one is I just discovered Audible, and I've really enjoyed having a book a month that I'm kind of accountable for since I've already paid the subscription fee. So it's been nice to just have that extra intake of knowledge and get to pick a book. It's kind of fun a month. So those are my two.
Frankie?
Okay, well, Landon just informed me that my pick has already been picked by him, but I'm going to pick it again because I love it. Toggle, which is a time management kind of app, and Eric actually brought it up last week on the podcast. I love it. We don't use it here at work, but I still use it for my personal stuff and for work, so it's awesome.
Cool. Jacob?
My pick is workmanship.io. It's a site that's an HTML and CSS workmanship manual. This goes with the learning team today. It has elements, attributes, whatever, with the code and the reasoning behind why you do what you should do. So it's a good guide for just getting started.
Very cool. And as always, mine is completely off the rails. My pick this week is the Cobalt 15-inch pry bar.
That was my next pick.
So, moral of the story is, if you can get the right tool for the job, use the right tool, because it makes all the difference in the world. And it's just a little piece of metal, but if you don't have that little piece of metal, you're going to spend 3 or 4 times as long doing something that shouldn't take very long at all. So.
Well said.
Anyway, hey, Steph, thank you so much for joining us. Sorry we have to cut it off a little abruptly here, but we have to run to something. But thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great night, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, you too.